Mobile telephony is the game changer. I mean, it is for the world. There's no question of that. But most specifically, I mean, it has galvanized and revolutionized Africa. I remember reading, because I've used it quite a lot, the incredible statistic that when 20% of the population have got a mobile phone, tyranny can't exist. And this was sort of brought home in the Velvet Revolution, or whatever it was called, in the Philippines. And we saw it most recently now with 3G and stuff like that in North Africa. And that's the calling power to account. But actually, it galvanizes the economies hugely, particularly in the area where I do know about, which is Africa, where they didn't have infrastructure, very few roads, very little air. I mean, if you fly from Benin up to Cameroon, which is next door, you have to go via Paris. Very little rail. When the phone came along, it gave you virtual airways, virtual roads, virtual rail. And this completely altered the economy. I mean, completely. So that now 6 of the fastest 10 growing economies in the world are African. Had you told me that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I just wouldn't have accepted it. But I actually saw many examples, myself, anecdotal examples, where you can see this change taking place in front of you, to the point where Africa continentally now will probably do 6.8% growth as a continent this year, compared to the United States, 0.2 if you're lucky. Europe, more or less the same, and comparable growth to Asia. Incredible. We've been through a period of the industrial economy, and as capital and labour moved to the east and could outprice us, we went into the service economy, which collapsed recently because of the shenanigans of the plutocrats, which brought our countries to our knees. And we're moving now and probably are way past the beginning of the knowledge economy. That is the only place for our part of the world to go. And if we're not careful, we will be outpaced by the coming world, the world that will be centers, polar economic centres by 2050. That is the last, to me, it's the only place you can have higher education, research and development, knowledge economy. If you're not part of that, I'm not sure what happens. When the rest of the world is making the stuff simply because it can make it cheaper than we can, because we enjoy a high standard of living, what do we do? So therefore, the coming generations have to view this as part and parcel simply of their life. But there's the signature feature of our time is growing inequality, the very opposite of what our economies are meant to be doing. We're supposed to be fairly flat societies, egalitarian. But you're seeing in America a diminishing of the middle classes. I mean, this is almost impossible to imagine, never mind feel if you're living through it. In Europe, it's not quite the same, but unless we can have an equality of the sort of cyber experience in the classrooms, then we are going to see a problem. I mean, what will happen is that growing equality will translate into a growing competition problem. Unless you can level the field, economies will stagnate. It's so central to our economies that everyone is wired and able to participate in this new thing. It's like the manufacturing economy, but you haven't a clue and will not have an opportunity to ever make anything. What happens? So this must be dealt with at the absolute country level. And if the legislators do not understand that this is where Europe and the United States have to drive their economies towards, there is going to be a serious problem. Last week, the OECD brought out a statistic, which of course you intuitively know is completely correct, that the countries that pay their teachers the most have the highest education qualifications. Though, Now, something has happened where we've imposed on teachers, and I include the UK where I live, all the stuff that we've decided not to do. Our economies demand that the mother and the father both work to maintain a lifestyle that satisfies us. We do have, beyond coherent families, we have atomized families. So teachers are now not just expected to go in and teach, which is increasingly difficult because of the disconnect between having technology, not having technology, how does it all come together? And the pastoral care of students, the problems that these kids have, the fact that school hours might have to be longer because parents aren't at home, meals have to be catered for, that government curricula and standards have to be met, that there has to be certain, targets realised, and we pay them buttons. This is preposterous. This doesn't work as an idea for a future society. Unless there's coherence here, there's going to be a major problem. And we have to pay teachers the respect that all societies throughout history have paid to their teachers, their rabbis, their knowledge imparters. Read any book from the past. This is what parents usually do when they're at home, but given that there's very little time to be there as a family, this is less and less the case. This is less and less the job of families. Grandparents, are away separately. So it's now all down to teachers to do all this, to try and keep this society together, all flowing in one direction. It's too much. And we pay those creeps in Wall Street that destroy economies at the flick of a switch. And in the city of London, it's not just here, and everywhere else, $90 million, 94.5, I read one of them. For what? For what? When private reward is out of kilter, you have a problem. It's out of kilter when people who give no social benefit earn millions, and teachers, which give nothing but social benefit, remain unrewarded and put upon. Has to change.